Being homeless, the main thing that I felt was vulnerability.
And it's not easy. It's not easy at all.
I ended up in a situation in which I had nothing, no money, no house, nothing.
When you find yourself in this situation, when you left everything behind and you don't have anything, you don't own anything, the task was just to get to a safer place, that's all.
It's old age pensioners, people who built this country. These are the people who are suffering today.
I had nothing. I had nothing at all, besides the clothes that they gave me that I left the jail in.
It's about seeing people, and it's about giving them the dignity at their toughest time, when things are just really tough. That's when people need support, and that's when people need kindness.
I don't think that nobody can imagine they will go through such a terrible time in their lives, but sometimes things happen that we don't imagine.
Nobody cares. People who are supposed to care don't. Thread Together care, and they do.
Retailers have brand new, unsold clothes destined for landfill. Thread Together provides the link between those fashion brands and people in need by collecting that clothing and taking it to people who need it.
It was a really obvious idea. Don't put clothes in landfill, give them to people in need. Put them on the backs of people that need them.
Anthony, good morning. Welcome to the Impact Leaders webinar. Great to see you. How are you?
Hi, Jeremy. I'm well, thank you. It's great to be with you today.
I've wanted to have this conversation for a long time, and we've been speaking now over a number of years, and I'm always excited by the impact that we've been able to help drive through Equal Change, although what's more exciting is the impact that retailers are having overall by supporting your work, which we're going to do a dive into very shortly. Just to start, can you please share with everyone what does Thread Together do?
Thank you again for this opportunity and for the platform for enabling the work that we do. Thread Together is Australia's highest ethical response to fashion excess. So what does that actually mean? Sadly, in Australia, 1 in 8 adults and 1 in 6 children do not have adequate access to essential clothing. At the same time, about 1/3 of clothing that's manufactured or produced and brought into our country remains unsold. And so Thread Together exists to solve these two complex problems of clothing people that are in need and keeping clothing out of landfill by diverting new clothing that would otherwise be destined to landfill and giving that clothing to people in need.
It seems like such an obvious solution when you hear you explain the way in which it works. I mean, what was the genesis of Thread Together? Like, how did it come to be, and why perhaps did it take until now for this Thread Together to? I mean, perhaps Thread Together should have existed many years ago. But could you shed some light on the history of the organisation?
So in 2012, our founder, Andy Hallis, one of the founding family members of the Sea Folly business, had a small production fault in some product and took it to a local charity and offered that product to the local charity instead of putting that product into landfill. And in doing so, almost stumbled across the problem and the solution at the same time. When she was there, she met a family, a young woman with children of similar age to her, rummaging through plastic bags of secondhand clothing, and just thought, there's no dignity. How can we give this family access to clothing to really give them a sense of dignity and purpose? And Andy picked up the phone and she called a few people in her network and said, hey, could we get a few items of clothing down to this charity? And so what she didn't appreciate at the time was the magnitude of the amount of new clothing that is overproduced and never sells. And most of that product sits in warehouses and collects dust. And some brands just don't have a scalable, ethical pathway and end up putting that to landfill. And so what did she decide to do? Well, she decided to address that problem by connecting brands with unsold inventory or aged inventory to people in the community that are in need of clothing. And we now work with thousands of registered charities who connect us to people who need clothing. And we work equally with thousands of retailers who have a little bit of excess, some a little bit more than others, but we don't work in a judgmental way. We take that clothing and we give it to people that are in need.
And what inspired you to work for Thread Together? What was your journey in this sector?
One of my highest values is the value of contribution and giving back. Coming from the corporate roles, which I spent the early part of my career in, I I was in consulting and solving problems for people and businesses and aligning shareholder value. And what did I want to do? I wanted to solve more meaningful problems, and I spent a lot of time searching for the opportunity to help more people that were in need. And when I stumbled across, in some ways, I stumbled across this myself, the opportunity to solve two really relevant problems: the damage to the planet that fashion can have and sometimes does have, and the amount of vulnerability in the community. And so these two problems are relevant problems, meaningful problems that I wanted to get my teeth stuck into.
Thanks for sharing that. It's one of the consistent themes in these interviews is how passionate the executive teams are, and indeed the whole organisation is about the work. Could you perhaps share what does it feel like every day to wake up, drive to work, and know that your efforts and those of your team will be directly impacting the lives of many Australians in their often in their times of greatest need?
So clothing has the power to change lives and transform lives. And I think those that are more fortunate don't necessarily think about the impact that clothing can have on them. And those that are less fortunate very are acutely aware what it's like to stand out and not fit in, whether it's turning up to your first day at school without school shoes, or whether it's turning up to an interview, or presenting yourself in court looking and not feeling that you're going to be well represented. Or maybe you're not even able to support, your family's not able to afford a dress to send you to a school formal or a suit for that matter. And so every single day, our team, myself and our team, are really inspired by the difference that clothing can have on people's lives. And so we are working really, really hard to collect clothing from around the country, and make that clothing available to people who are in need, but not just making it available to them, giving them the choice, because choice is really important when it comes to empowering people. And what we're trying to do is give people that opportunity. And Yeah, we just know that the limited time that we have on this planet, if we spend it well, we can actually help more people and do good by the planet at the same time.
I love the work that you're doing at Thread Together, Anthony. It's really extraordinary, and I was really moved by how you responded, how Thread Together responded overall to the crisis in the Northern Rivers. So I met you there about a week or so after you'd set up that initial pop-up store in Lismore. Could you talk briefly around how tragic that event was, and how, perhaps as an example of the model and the speed at which you're able to deploy clothing and resources into a community who had effectively lost everything at that point in time, how you responded, what it meant to the community, and even I think it's interesting to share how, when these things fall out of the media, as I understand, you're still in those communities today, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And how often it takes to actually help get people back on their feet.
Sadly, Sadly, many families find themselves today experiencing vulnerability through natural disaster, and so many families in the Northern Rivers were impacted and have taken many months, some years to recover, and will take many years to recover. We want to be able to respond in the most agile way as possible. When a natural disaster occurs, the first thing that we do is we make our service, which is available online to caseworkers, we make it available to individuals that are impacted. Individuals that are impacted by a natural disaster can shop online with Thread Together, build out a new wardrobe of what they need, and check out. And the difference between our store and the many retailers on your platform that make clothing available or sell clothing is we don't actually have a checkout. The order's placed and we can pick and pack and distribute that clothing next day. So that's the first way in which we're able to respond in a very agile way. We then get our
And just sorry,
teams.
Anthony, just to make that point clear for everyone, there's no cost to that.
Correct. All the
Yeah, by
clothing that's
checkout,
donated to
everything is
us.
just done for free. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
All
So
the
you're
clothing
effectively
that's
you're selling clothes around the country. It's extraordinary. People can effectively shop without any expense, and you will send it to their homes.
That's correct. Yeah, and we
Yeah.
pick up the cost to fulfill that request and distribute it out into that individual. So in a natural disaster, the services are made available to people that are impacted. That allows us time to build the relationships and the networks on the ground to establish how best to respond. What we did in the Northern Rivers is we have a fleet of vehicles that drive into the community all year round. And during natural disasters, we point them into locations. So we point our vehicles, they've got walk in wardrobes inside with change rooms on the rear, and individuals have the opportunity to walk into that experience and access underwear. So people that have lost everything just need a dry pair of underpants and a pair of socks and some shorts, for example. And so the scale of the scale and the magnitude of the devastation that we saw in the first few days, I've seen nothing like it. And I've been into very vulnerable locations across the globe, but this was like devastation on another level. People's livelihoods were on the front lawns of their houses as they'd been cleared out. And so the vehicles would drive into those communities and make clothing available. And that we were on the ground within sort of 3 to 5 days of the roads reopening. And then we set up where we met each other in at the Lismore Showgrounds. We created an opportunity inside an evacuation centre for individuals and families to access clothing immediately. And so, again, we took fixtures and fittings from other retailers. We built out this little experience that gave women and children and men the opportunity to come in and access clothing. And I can tell you, being on the ground there and seeing the trauma that these people had experienced, just to be able to allow them to choose some new underwear, some new jeans, new t-shirts, whatever it was that they needed, meant that the clothing that would otherwise be destined for landfill was going to the best possible use. And we made that same thing possible, not just at the time of the event. Beyond that timeline, as early as a few weeks back, we were supporting kids in Lismore and Richmond River High. Many of those school kids wouldn't be able to celebrate finishing school because they didn't have the means to buy a dress or access a suit. And some of our partners came alongside us and gave these kids just an amazing experience. We're regularly back in that community, so not only continuing to support the agencies that are working with vulnerable people online, but also with our vehicle services ongoing.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary example of not only, as you say, being agile, but responding with deep humanity and generosity to what was really an unprecedented tragedy. And of course, like most global issues, they fall out of the media cycle very quickly. And you're still there, supporting the community in the Northern Rivers as an example of that
Yeah,
commitment.
and we're still supporting communities on the south coast that have experienced bushfires in New South Wales, and we're supporting communities in WA now that have lost their homes through recent bushfires. The shift from what we've done in the past to what we're doing now, if I might just touch on, is we're shifting from being reactive in the way in which we're responding to become more proactive. By that I mean you want to have the product available to give to people at the time of an event. You don't want to wait for that product to be donated to you after the event. You want to have the relationships on the ground before an event occurs, not after. So the learning from the 23 events that we've responded to in the last few years, we're shifting gears from being reactive in responding to being proactive, and that's building networks and building relationships to respond as quickly as we can when an event does occur.
And it's worth highlighting the point, the best NGOs are in fact doing that. They are planning disaster mitigation. They are thinking forward. Like if you look at, for example, the situation in Gaza, the large humanitarian INGOs, they are moving in resources from around the world, preparing for when they're able to enter that community. And they have stockpiled resources and the ability to respond to global disasters when they happen. And so there is, behind the scenes of the great work of NGOs is an incredible logistics effort that takes place in order to not only respond, as you say, but to prepare for the next, almost certainly the next set of environmental challenges that are staring us.
And I always talk about access not being a scarcity thing. There's actually an abundance of everything, but to your point, to solve for the abundance of food insecurity or food insecurity or housing affordability, or in our case clothing, there's an abundance of all of that. The challenge is to make it visible to those that need it and have the logistical solutions in place to close the gap. And I think sadly, if we can't solve for the visibility and the logistics, a lot of these valuable resources, whether it's food, whether it's underutilized assets for housing or clothing for that matter, that what we talk about as the forgotten basic human right, may find its way to landfill, which is really sad.
It seems that Thread Together is brilliant at establishing partnerships as a key part of your model. Can you talk to us about the power of partnerships? What does it mean to thread together, and what does it enable?
So we're tackling two problems with the one solution, but we can't solve these problems alone. We recognize that to help more people, we have to partner and collaborate with other registered charities and welfare agencies that understand people who are in need. In order to clothe people who are in need, we have to partner with other organizations to bring the product into our center. And we have to partner with organizations who are helping us to volunteer to deliver the services. So we are predicated on collaboration as an organization to help more people who are in need. The way in which we can help more people in need is to build meaningful partnerships. Fewer, more meaningful partnerships, helping us to be very clear on what it is that we need so that we can actually help those people is what's critical. And we love working with people to help more people, and we look to the brands, the retailers, the enablers of our solution to help us to make that possible. And so partnering is a critical component, and one such way is partnering through platforms that you offer. You offer an amazing platform for retailers and consumers to give back, and that's another way in which we're partnering with you and those on your platform to make that possible.
There's an interesting difference, I believe it's worth highlighting, between the for-profit and not-for-profit sectors, where the incentives and objectives are materially different. So the NGO sector, and this is part of our vetting of our NGO partners, are creating these strategic partnerships with others in the sector, exactly as you've mentioned, with the goal to accelerate the ultimate objective, which in your case is to clothe as many people and support them in their hour of need. Whereas in the for-profit sector, there is a hyper-competitiveness, whereas the profit motive results in a very different set of objectives. It's an interesting world in which these two worlds are now coming together more than ever before, and I think Thread Together exemplifies this in your work between partnering with NGOs and other charities as you do, and also the retail and business sector in order to provide that clothing. The current economic climate, Anthony, is an interesting one, challenging one for most organisations. How has it impacted you over the last 12 months?
Great question. I think one of our we're reliant on philanthropy to deliver this service. So we're reliant on building partnerships. We don't receive any government funding. So when lots of fashion brands help us to fundraise through platform through I Equals Change, and so when there's a little bit of a dip in economics cycles as we're experiencing now, not only does it affect us financially, but it actually affects us more prominently on the product. So retailers are holding on to product a little bit longer than what they would normally do to try and sell it, which means it's taking a little bit longer for it to reach us, which means it's taking us longer to return, fulfill orders and return that clothing back into the community for reuse. So the biggest challenge that we're experiencing right now, and it's sort of in some ways amplified at the time of the year because we're in a sort of a high transaction period, a high sales period where brands are using the Black Friday, Cyber Weekend, and into Christmas and Boxing Day. They're trying to sell through, which is the right thing from their perspective, which just means it takes a little bit longer for us to receive the product. So our biggest challenge right now is just having access to product, enough product of what's needed, given the demand is so high at this time of the year.
So if there's any retailers on the call or working for retailers, hit up Anthony. They need more clothing. It is obviously a time in which a lot of families are experiencing food insecurity, and there is, as you say, it's a heightened transactional period, and so any opportunity to support Thread Together further will be absolutely welcome with open arms.
And
Anthony,
that's really easy as well. I might just add, just jumping onto our website and asking us to come and collect the clothing, and we'll be happy to do that. And we can do that any time of the day. And if it's not right now, we would welcome that opportunity earlier in the new year. We're always looking to work with more brands. We've got a call out at the moment for underwear. We've got a real shortage at the moment for men, women, and children's underwear, and essential that no one should deserve to have to wear someone else's underwear. So right now there's a shortage, and we're just looking to close that gap.
what are some of the unique challenges and joys of your work?
Being a small team and is a challenge and also a joy. Having worked in very large teams and large organizations, working in large teams bring upon different challenges and different experiences. I love working in a small team. Our team are always in flow, or we try and ensure we're always in flow, which means we enjoy what we're doing. When you can turn up to work and know that you've had a profound impact on an individual's life today, and it may just be one person, through the provision of new clothing to them, it's a joy. But to get that clothing to that person is a challenge. We've got to bring that clothing in. We work extremely hard. We work with over 5,000 volunteers a year at our centre, helping to get clothing ready to give to people. That's a challenge. A small team, we're not, we're very, very thin on the ground, and to clothe nearly 2,500 people a week means working really, really hard. And it's mobilizing volunteers, it's working alongside them, it's turning around the need for clothing in the community as quickly as you can. In a supply-led environment, we cannot control what comes to us. We don't have the means to hire more people and address the growth in demand for what we're doing. So it's really important that we work hard, but we work in a strategic way. So lots of challenges. The biggest is probably being supply-led, meaning that we don't control what comes to us when it's donated. We're happy to receive it. It doesn't matter whether it's winter clothing in the middle of summer, but that's a challenge because we seasonally lag. But we are working really hard to address all of these challenges and help more people in need. And if we're crystal clear on the true north, which is to keep clothing in circulation, get it onto people's backs who need it, and help to transform their lives, the rest of what we do fits into place.
Anthony, I remember when we first spoke, it was probably about 6 years ago now, and I thought I was passionate about what we did, and then I asked Anthony what we did, and like an hour later, I wasn't sure at what point you'd stop to breathe. And so where does this passion come from? I do note your charming South African accent, so it may be tied back to historically the part of the world you come from. But, my experience of speaking with extraordinary NGO leaders such as yourselves is that there was perhaps a moment or a series of moments in your life personally that galvanized you towards this work, where you actually realized that this work chose you and you didn't have a choice anymore? Could you share that with us?
I think that there's a few sort of inflection points in my career. One was, and I think I mentioned to this to you when we first met. I grew up in Johannesburg in South Africa. I lived through apartheid. I knew what it was like to judge someone based on the color of their skin. I was young. It had a profound impact on me to know that the color of your skin could impact, and this is not even before you put clothes on, but the color of your skin was impacting whether you could sit on a certain bench, whether you could go to a certain school, whether you could attend a certain sporting event or play for a particular sporting team. And so I could see the inequality from a very young age, before you even considered the importance of what it was like to be clothed appropriately. And and so I knew that we could do much better to bridge the barriers that existed between inequality. Even if we're living in Australia, there's a lot of still inequality. There's a significant distribution of wealth, which is obviously exacerbating the issue of inequality in Australia. So the first inflection point for me was just an awareness of what disadvantage and inequality looks like, and that you can make a difference as an individual. You don't have to have armies of people. You don't have to have lots of money. You don't have to wait until you've been extremely successful to have to contribute back. I talk about paying forward rather than giving back. And so for me, that first inflection point was visibility of disadvantage. I suppose throughout my career in corporate, I really challenged what my own value set was, and what what was the legacy, or what was the example that I wanted to leave on my children. And I wanted to instill in them a sense of contribution. And so it was a case of thinking through, what can I do to um, leave a good example on them, of what it means to be a good corporate citizen, and how could we give back to, or pay it forward to those that are in need. So um, I'm just extremely passionate about what I do now. I don't see it as a job. I see it as a calling. I think I mentioned our clothing plays a significant part in who we are. There's this concept around enclothed cognition, where we judge people based on what we're wearing. And I think if we can just play a small role to reduce the stigma that and the judging that we have based on what people are wearing, will help us to help more people.
From businesses giving back $1 at a time through I Could Change, we've now been able to raise over $285,000 and counting for Thread Together, which is adding up to something significant. I was really excited to see that figure. I hadn't seen it for a number of months, how much we've raised. So it's really remarkable to see how much retailers and businesses are supporting your work. Can you share with everyone, what does funding like this, what impact does this level of funding create for the organisation and the people you serve?
So for as little as $5, Thread Together can provide a brand new wardrobe for a person in need. So to have raised $280,000, probably closer to $300,000, is a significant amount of a resource that can be utilized in our organization to clothe as many people. And it is very difficult to fundraise. And we don't fundraise in the more traditional ways. And the thing that I love about I equals change is it actually is a more innovative way for organizations like ourselves and other NGOs to benefit from creating this contribution of giving at the point of sale. There's many benefits why we love this model. One of the biggest is that it actually reduces the investment of our time. Once we've set it up, we have amazing retailers that support us. I think we have 50 or 60 retailers on the platform that support us at checkout. And given how difficult it is to fundraise, to have partnerships like this mean that those funds are ticking away in the background while we're focusing on doing what matters most, which is helping more people. Every minute of my day that I spend having to fundraise is a distraction from helping more people in a more scalable way. So if we can have more brands support us in the way that they're currently supporting us today, and we can raise more money. If we can 10x the contribution that's coming to us today, it'll allow us to more than 10x the impact that we can have on the community. So every single dollar that contributes adds up, and we can see that over time. To find a new partner at $100,000 or at $50,000 is a significant amount of effort. So if we can have hundreds of thousands of retailers contributing through those consumers contributing through those transactions when they're shopping online, and doing good by doing good, it's helping organizations like ours and the many others that are on your platform that are local and global, that are making a huge difference to vulnerable communities, and in our case, communities and our fragile planet.
What keeps you going each day? If there was one thing, what do you most look forward to?
I love my family. That's probably the thing that keeps me going most. So it's spending the limited time that I have with them before they go to school, and before my wife goes to work, and the time that we have together after our day is done. We've all got full calendars. Time is our rarest commodity. So the thing that keeps me going is just the opportunity to get to spend more time with them. Over and above that, it's helping people. There's so many people that could benefit from a little bit of help, whether that's help to move them in the right direction or move them along. So we're just trying to help more people. So I'm just sadly, there's more people than we can help today that need help, and we're just working really hard to work out how to get to them as quickly as we can.
And a final question, which I always like to end with: in many years from now, when you look back on your life professionally, what do you believe you'll be most proud of?
Tough question, Jeremy. What would I be most proud of? I think it's not about me. So it's not about it. So like, and I genuinely mean that it's not about what I would be most proud of. I think if the work that we have undertaken has empowered more people to be on a trajectory that actually gives them opportunity to change their course, I'd be most proud. If we could tackle the problem of overproduction and tackle the problem of people that are in need didn't need our services, and that we didn't exist, I'd be most proud. I think that if Thread Together as an organization didn't exist, in that there was no excess clothing for distribution, in that there wasn't, and that the people that we are currently supporting didn't need our services, that would be probably one of the proudest moments that I'd look back on and say, vision and mission achieved. We don't need to be anywhere and everywhere. If we solve for the problem, and we can do that at scale, and the problem no longer exists, that would be probably my proudest moment.
We'd all like to be put out of a job, wouldn't we, in this sector? Yeah.
Yes, and sadly, that's becoming increasingly more
less.
challenging.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So this is a extraordinary moment in history where we have a confluence of the effects of climate change, which is increasing weather events on Australia, an economic challenge, which interest rates are expected to stay high for a number of additional months. And it's Christmas now as well, where there is the expectation of gifting. It's often a very challenging and often lonely time for many Australians. If you are working for a business, I Could Change works now not only with retailers, but with all kinds of businesses, enabling you to give back around your invoicing, to bring to life your commitment to people and planet, those ESG initiatives, and to speak to your sustainability with 100% transparency. So to be able to support the work, the extraordinary work of Thread Together with Anthony and his team, now would be an amazing time. There's still time actually to come on board before Christmas, the season of giving. And we'd like giving to be not just about giving gifts, but about, in the case of Thread Together, giving clothes for their work, and giving in funding to enable them to create more impact. And so much is bought. There's billions of dollars of gifts bought this time of year that people don't really need. They often end up again as landfill. It's money spent unnecessarily. It's gifts bought unnecessarily. It's stuff manufactured unnecessarily. And to call it what it is, it's all part of the problem. This social expectation of gifting. So you could be supporting Anthony and his team in their work. And to give you a very brief example, another of our partners is Send Hope Not Flowers. So instead of buying flowers, right, which only last for a few days, for the same cost of buying a bunch of flowers, they can almost ensure a woman survives childbirth amongst our nearest neighbours in Papua New Guinea. So these are just examples of how I think we need to rethink the expectation of gifting and the normalisation of that, and think, how could we actually use those funds to support the incredible work of NGOs and charities like you've just heard today from Thread Together. Anthony, thank you so much for your time. I know you've got 1,000 things on, especially at this time of year, so really appreciate it. And congrats again for winning that award for Best Charity Initiative just last week. So incredibly well-deserved. We're a proud partner of yours. You're doing incredible work for so many families in Australia now who are experiencing both clothing and food insecurity. And obviously the two are interrelated in many respects. So your work and your passion and your smarts that has enabled you to accelerate this with, as you say, incredible what a small team can do. Indeed, that's the only thing that's changed the world, is a small group of people believe that they can create a new normal, which reflects the need of the time.
Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you again, Jeremy. And if I could just extend my gratitude again to I Equals Change and all the brands that are on the platform that are supporting not only Thread Together, but all of the other NGOs that they've selected. It's through your platform that is enabling, over $9 million worth of impact around the globe. And we're grateful to be a partner on the platform, as I'm sure most of the other NGOs are the same, if I speak on their behalf. And to all those retailers that actually are seeing the benefit of introducing contribution back into their point of sale and the benefit that it's bringing to their business, please spread the word amongst those that aren't, to help to get more brands to give back. And in doing so, we can help more people that are in need.
Thanks, Anthony. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.